Hey there, welcome back to Sessions with System and Soul. I'm McKenzie. I'm here with Benj.
What's up?
Benj has got good energy today. And we've got what we call a reflection episode for you. What that means is we're going to talk through some things that we notice that are just kind of a general feeling, a general vibe, a general challenge that we see as we work with clients and that we experience ourselves. So we're working through it with you. We're going to have a conversation today around it. Before we start, I want to thank Fist Bumps. So Fist Bumps is the team that puts this amazing show on for us. If you need help with a really authentic message and really authentic content, they are your people. Getfistbump.com. Okay, Benj.
I can feel you bracing yourself for this conversation.
You know what? I am actually. Can I tell you? Okay, so this morning I was thinking about this. I'm like, how do we want to address this like pace of change idea? And I found myself like, this is probably just like how I operate, but I found myself being kind of irritated because I'm like, I think one of the things that's really hard about this conversation is there's a lot of, like, in my opinion, there's like a lot of competing wisdom around it. Like there's a lot of like, so here I wrote down what I feel like I've heard all these people say all these phrases that are supposed to be like, I guess they're supposed to be advice when you're trying to decide, are we moving at the right pace? Is the pace of change fast enough? Are we being thoughtful enough? Whatever it is.
I'm so curious. What's on the list?
Okay, so my first one. Okay, by the way, don't know who said any of these things, so that's how valid they are. Slow is fast and fast is smooth. Move fast and break things. Keep the one thing, which is kind of a pace thing.
Okay, hold on. So the first one's a military phrase. You don't have it perfect, but it's a military phrase. And I love that one. The second one's from Zuckerberg. That was his whole thing at Facebook for the first 20 years. And the third one, I'm pretty sure, is from the movie City Slickers. But keep going.
Okay. So we're fact checking as we go.
Yeah, I got you.
And we have a strategy. It's called doing things. That's the other one I'm thinking of. And I think that one's about pace because I think you say that when it's like, okay, we need to go. Like we need to be in motion. And that one is Herb Keller, which is legit. So
yeah.
Can you think of, as I say all those, can you think of one that you?
Oh, probably. I don't know. Not on the spot, but I do love a few of those, and Herb Keller's especially, because what it reminds me is that like the strategy, like people get so wrapped up in strategy, which is not really what we're talking about today. But the reality of what strategy is, like it should tell us what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. Mm-hmm. That's like at its core, it should give us insight to that. And in what we're going to do, keep the main thing, move fast and break things is great for stage one companies. I'm not sure it's the right advice for all companies.
Yeah.
And I actually have your first quote on I got a new laptop, but it was the only thing on my old laptop. And it says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so the idea is like, I want to go fast, but the way to go fast is to go smooth. And the way to go smooth is to go slow. And it's more, I think, of a mindset than it is actual pace, because like if you're in the middle of a war zone, like you got to go fast, right? Like it's not like, hey, let's just sit back here in the bunker and drink some tea and think about what we're going to do, right? You've got to go. There's still movement, but make your movement smooth.
Yeah, I think you're helping me place some of these things, but I do think that a lot of the pace conversation this is an Andy Stanley thing, but it's attention to be managed, like not a problem to solve, but attention to manage, and that's what I want to talk to you about today, in a couple of different ways, because I think oftentimes we're like, it's as simple as this, but there's more of like a sliding scale of dealing with change, how fast we move, how we make decisions, how we bring people along for those decisions. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Let's go. It's definitely attention. We feel it too.
Yeah, and we can talk through that. Maybe we can get some work done while we're on this call. Well, the first kind of category of tension that we deal with this is this idea of like progress and perfection, which I think there's another way to say it might be like iteration versus kind of like the highest quality outcome. Like really this battle between we're learning as we go, we're giving ourselves space to unlearn, we're giving ourselves space to create feedback loops,
Yeah.
and then moving towards the quickest, most high quality, most, directed action and getting it right the first time, second time, third time.
Well, let me just tell you my reaction to that, because I have a deep, deep bias when it comes to this, and that learning happens in action. And so, like, when people get paralyzed by perfection, it feels like something's sitting on the shelf because we're afraid of failure. And there's actually a mentality that you can have over the speed of failure. And so it's not about not failing, because you will fail. Things will be less than perfect. So how fast can we get through the reps, the awkward reps? And a lot of this comes down, some of us are wired, I'm a perfectionist. Excellence is all that matters. I don't want to be seen as somebody that makes a mistake or an error. So I reread my email 5 times. And my bent's like way on the other side. Like, you're going to get an email from me. It might not have capitalization. It might not have punctuation. I'm going to do ... 7 times in one very long sentence, because that's how my mind thinks. So you might get that from me, but I'm going to get that off, and it's going to be done, and it's going to be out of my mind and out of my space. And so my ability to get more done, maybe not perfect, but more done, I just don't know how much value perfection actually has. Now, on the other side of that, like, I don't want us launching features in our software that have bugs and let users have a bad experience.
Right.
So it's knowing like where that is the tension, right? Where is the line? But I think learning happens in action. And if we're waiting for something to be perfect, then we're like to launch, like, then we're not getting customer feedback. We're not seeing where things break fast enough, and just learning happens in action. But I know that's a tension, like, because you do things really, really well, and you want them to be really, really well. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't, and in response to what you just said, I don't think that I totally agree with, I think I was going to say like in more of a growth stage business, but I think in any business I've been in, the progress over perfection, it's true no matter what stage you're at. I think it's focusing well, 2 things. I think it's focusing on what things require perfection, which is one of the things that you just mentioned. So I think that's one bucket. What requires perfection, and are we creating the correct feedback loops so that if we're living in the journey of progress, are we making sure that we're learning from it? I think that's where that falls off the rails, and people want to use that as like, we've got to learn, which I think is absolutely true 100%. We've got to beta test. We've got to get MVPs out there. We have to do that. But we also have to make sure that we're looking at what we learned and iterating on that. When I say we need to focus perfection, what you just said about like, so we have a software, and it would not be acceptable for us to be releasing features that are half baked. It doesn't create the customer experience that we know we need in order to serve our customers in the way that we want to. So I think that perfection piece, there's going to be a progress to get to that perfection, but there's a certain number of things in any business where you say, these are non-negotiable. These are the things we're going to do extraordinarily well. And we're probably actually going to be spending more and more time making progress on making that thing better over time. So that could be customer service, that could be speed to delivery, that could be communication. Like there's probably a handful of things that require that perfection, and maybe we give it the space to, or we just acknowledge that we acknowledge the thing that requires the perfection. We let everything else live in progress.
I like feel myself tightening up on the inside, even when you say like there's some things that require perfection. So go back to the software example, like we don't get perfection. There's going to be some weird edge case, use case that we didn't expect, and a customer is going to find it.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's like, get it to the place where we're comfortable with for the majority of the users, put it out there, and then our job is to be like, how fast can we respond and fix that?
Right. It's not perfection. It's not perfection. It's excellence.
Yeah, it's a standard, and different things have different bars for what that can be. And different people have different bars, and I think that's where it can create organizational frustration.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a session yesterday, and people are like, "Why hasn't this launched?" And it took us forever to get to like kind of the root problem. And there were a couple things that people like didn't believe were ready. Like, and it's what you're saying. Like, they didn't feel like it was to the excellence standard that the organization has. And so internally it was hard to get buy-in to then take externally. And that was a huge roadblock. And so we had to go, okay, well, what things don't feel excellent? And are these really deal breakers that are going to stop us from launching? Or so we made like an absolute list and a coming soon list, right? So where is the line that we feel good enough we can take this to market, to start to get some feedback, to get more data? Like, action creates learning, right? So there's going to be something else that comes up that's like, ooh, this is not to our level of excellence. But we wouldn't have known that if it was sitting on the shelf. But it took a lot for them to get to that root kind of in the room, especially because it involves the whole organization. So everybody had their different perspective on their part of the pieces and what should be perfect and what was good and what wasn't. So it took us a long time to get there and realize that's what was happening.
I think that's such an important step. It's funny. I had a similar conversation internally yesterday inside of our team around the same thing. We're working on a project, and as we decided this project, I guess at this point 6 weeks ago. So we're halfway through the time allotted for it. And over this 6 weeks, we've learned a ton, and it's kind of changed. Everything that we planned for has changed. And we're looking at it, and I'm talking with this team member, and it's like, oh, like this kind of feels like a failure because everything we thought is not true, and we're not going to hit the goal. And so we're like, well, what could we do differently? And the two things we landed on were, well, when we talk about this on the front end, maybe there's some like reality check. We need to pause and do what you did with that team, which is like, what's negotiable, what's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
There's that. And then there's also just giving ourselves the space for iteration and learning. And maybe that's truly like, we need to allot more days of time or weeks of time because there's a lot of unknowns that we need to account for. One of the things as you were talking that I was thinking of is, I think a lot of times, and maybe this is a me problem, but like I will get frustrated at times when I see slowness.
Yeah.
When we've made a decision, it's like we decided that we're moving in that direction. Why aren't we there? And I think there's so much wrapped up in that and leading people through change. But I think one of the things that you just said related to that team is that they were unclear. It wasn't that people are being slow. It's that there was something that wasn't clear about what the deliverable was, what our standard of excellence is. And that's, the slowness is probably an indicator less of like disengagement or disinterest or procrastination. It's more of a signal of care because people are like, I want to do my job right. So I think that conversation is really important to have.
It is. I will say it also felt like a leadership fail because these are senior leaders and nobody like just raised their hand and said, I have trouble backing this, or my team has trouble backing this because X, Y, Z. So the fact that we had to have the conversation and go those layers deep without somebody just raising their hand or multiple people raising their hand, that felt like, ooh, we've got some, leadership inner work to do because we can't just, my coach has let's see if I can get this quote right. Be careful of disagreement masquerading as confusion. And I see that a lot too, is like, oh, well, I wasn't sure about this and this and this. No, you just disagreed, or you didn't like the answer, or you didn't do your job. So you just act confused about what was supposed to happen. I don't know why my team did this and this and this. Okay, well, maybe it's because you didn't lead them well and give them the directive to get it done or the urgency. And I think I know what project you're referring to internally for us. And I kind of smile going, man, I don't know that we could have done any better on the front side. And that's kind of the point. Is like, we all love the saying, like, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, right? You can add that.
Mike Tyson.
Yep, there you go. Thank you. Fact check. But like this is that. We created a plan and then we got punched in the face. Like, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger. There's a better way to actually go about the whole thing. Different people need to be involved in different parts of the process in a different way. And so we learned a lot. We iterated, we switched, and it's going to be so much better because of all the switches that we've made. So I don't know. But what you're talking about goes to the other thing that we kind of we talk about internally. I don't know if we've ever used this language outside, but it's like your gut versus gravity. My gut always says we should be moving faster, always. But there's a gravity in every organization to both how you've always done it and a pace that you're comfortable with. Like, people seek comfort. And so very rarely, most founders are very okay with being uncomfortable. That's like the number one trait, because there's nothing comfortable about being a founder. But then you're surrounded by a bunch of people in an organization that seek comfort, and they, the leaders have gut saying this should be this way and this should go faster and why aren't we doing this? And then there's a gravity to the people in the organization kind of pulling you down. And I laughed, what was it, this week or last week, when we were around a table and you said, but I just don't know if we're going fast enough. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the moment. Write it down. Like, it's usually me saying that to you and like you being the gravity. And I'm like, this is awesome. And then I was kind of the gravity in that moment. I'm like, yeah, but I honestly am not sure what we even do to be able to go faster. But I feel you. So there's like the gut, the feeling, and then the reality. So how are you handling your frustration of your gut that we should be going faster in our pace, and the gravity of resources and time and people and all of the realities?
Okay, I have two thoughts, and I want to push your question to the side and go back to what you were saying about the speed versus comfort thing. There's part of me that agrees with it, and then there's part of me that's like, oh wait, let me do this. Yes, and yes, and meaning I agree. And also, I don't know that it's always a comfort thing as much as it is, we have people on our team with different, we call them geniuses. Their genius requires a pace that lets them sit in something, comb through something, marinate, and pull out. Like, oh yeah, did we think of this? Did we? Oh, if they have a few hours instead of a few minutes, they're able to look at something differently, objectively, or they can make that connection. I'm a little more like that, so I tend to be, and I'm a more cautious person. So the caution is probably the comfort piece. It makes me feel comfortable when we're moving cautiously. But I do think, and we've encountered this internally, it's like your pace is, I can give feedback in 5 minutes, and there's other people on our team, they need 5 hours. And their return in that 5 hours is going to be exponentially better for the way that they operate. And I think we have to keep that in mind as well. Just as a dignifying piece.
Absolutely right.
It gets us what we want.
I'll give you a very real example of that. Like, there were a couple actual objectives that were on our list for the quarter. Well, one specifically that you had, and it's big, and you were going to have a couple meetings. And I'm sure if you stuck with that, whatever you came back would be like masterful, and there'd be a document and there'd be a flow chart, and there'd be like the level of detail would have been way deeper than I was capable of. I am capable of, because of what you're talking about, your ability to go deep into the thinking. Well, we decided, a week or two ago, I'm gonna take that for now, and I just like stewed on it in my subconscious, and it actually drove me crazy for a little while. But then I came back, and what I brought back to you was like the work output of maybe 20 minutes at a computer, right? Like, maybe it was more than that. But, there was all the thinking that went into it and then the 20 minutes at the computer. Your work would have been days, but it would have been way deeper and way better. But you also would have gotten to a point where, like, because you would have wanted it to be so good, had you been wrong in any of your decision points along the way, you would have done a lot of work that we would have to like go backwards on, right? And so I took it, and like 2 days later, I'm like, when can I present this to you and Chris, right? Like, to make sure I'm on the right path. And I don't know if I am or not, but that's kind of an example of what you're talking about. Like, I'm going to go really fast, but it might not have a depth and an accuracy to it that you or some of our other people on the team would have, which I think it makes a good partnership, but it is also still a tension because I know when you give me something, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to get back. It's going to end up back on my plate. I'm going to have to do the deep work. Am I right? Is that real?
Sometimes, yeah. Sorry, my mind's going a bunch of directions. I want to talk about, I think sometimes, yes, it's, again, we're in a tension. That's why this is kind of, there's not a one answer, because there's sometimes I fully agree with you. It's like, we don't need, and I need to make sure that I'm not communicating to our team in a way that when I give them something to do, they go and they spend 17 hours instead of 7 minutes, when all we need is the 7 minutes. We don't need 17 hours yet.
Yeah.
But I think we have to, and sometimes you do a really good job of this, where you communicate that on the front end, where you're like, let's go work on this, but don't spend, like, here's how much time you should spend on it. Like, I know we could go and become like PhDs on this, but like, we need to right size the appetite is the word we use for it, but communicate what the appetite is, I think, is really important.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're really good at it too. And I think that's something you've learned over the last couple of years, that even if we think, this is a 10-minute task, somebody could pick it up thinking that we think it's a, 10-hour task. Right. And so to communicate that, you do that exceptionally well.
Yeah. Thank you.
So when do you decide whether to like push a team to go faster versus like slow down and do it well, or just not even, staying neutral to the speed that's happening?
When do we know when to push a team to go faster, when to slow down, or stay neutral? So I'll answer it, and I want to hear your answer. I think when we're trying something new, when we don't have proof of concept yet, I think we have to move really fast. So we know we have a new product that we want to release. There's a new business line. There's a new marketing campaign, marketing activity. I think that requires speed plus feedback loops, plus iteration. Like, there's got to be this like process. When do we need to slow down? I think once we found a proof of concept with something, I think then we dial it in. It's like, how do we sharpen what we've learned that works? For example, this is inside of our business. So we've got software. We've talked about that. The software is like constantly iterative. There's so much that we have to move really, really fast. Some of that's the industry pace, and some of it is just we have to test things and learn. On the other side of the business, we move a lot slower when it comes to we have a coach community, a bunch of business coaches that are part of our community, and we are very, very intentional and careful about how we add new things to that environment. And I think maybe that's an example of how that works, because we want to be the word is intentional, and how we handle that part of our business. It feels like we've really established a proof of concept. We've got something awesome. We're like, we don't want to mess it up. Neutral, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I have an answer for neutral.
Here's what comes up for me.
Yeah.
Is I think most organizations are moving too slow. And I think most organizations, the reason why is because we do the work without thinking about the work. And maybe it's just a skill set I have, but I end up in a lot of conversations where I question how we're doing the work, and people are like, oh, oh yeah, we could do it that way. And now we're doing it in half the time, or we're doing it, and that those kind of conversations happen a lot. And I think it's because most people, when they start doing the work, they don't think about how to do the work. I am so, I don't know if this is the right word, but I want to say lazy, that I will spend the time figuring out the easiest way to do the work before I just start doing the work. And I think most organizations don't do that. So if you feel like you're going too slow, you're probably not taking enough time to think about how you're doing the work. That's my big takeaway. What's yours?
No, I love that. I was going to say maybe neutral isn't an option because it should always be a conversation.
That's interesting. At least, yeah, then you're forcing that. Are we doing this the right way?
Yeah.
That's good.
And I would say the takeaway, it's advice and a takeaway, I guess, but like this is attention to be managed, which means this is a conversation at all times. I think there's an emotional aspect to this. One thing we didn't really talk about is I think sometimes we get into this comparison trap with this pace of change for our organization or our stuff versus other people's stuff. And I think we have to have the conversations internally and either, acknowledge that we're trying to compare ourselves to our competitor. We're unclear. We disagree. Like, I think it has to be a conversation. And it's a huge fail, as you mentioned with the example you gave earlier, it's a huge fail for a leadership team if someone's not raising their hand to say, I either don't understand this or we haven't evaluated this or whatever it is. So I think maybe that's my takeaway.
That's good. Hey, thanks for bringing up this conversation. This is good. It feels deep because it feels personal. So hopefully everybody listening can relate to this in one way or another and have something actionable that they can go do. A team that they can go ask about how they're doing the work, or challenge them to speed up, or maybe slow down. Maybe there's a quality issue there that they are going too fast, which makes me almost sick to say, because I want everything to go faster. But we'll see how fast this next week goes, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Sessions. Thanks again to Fist Bump.